EDA, or ectodysplasin, is a protein that naturally occurs in the human body. Those that are affected by XLHED have either a reduction in EDA or it's completely absent from their body. And that's the reason that we see things like an absence of sweat glands or teeth or hair in those individuals, because they don't have the protein that kind of switches on the development of those things. Certainly during the infant period, there's a danger of overheating. That can lead to febrile stroke or even death in some cases if they get too hot and they can't be treated early on. Then there are a whole host of secondary symptoms, lots of respiratory infections and hospitalizations as a result of those things. And perhaps one of the biggest things we hear from our families is the impact on teeth and dentition. EDI 200 is a molecule that we produce in a laboratory, and it's essentially a replacement for a molecule that is already present in most people that aren't affected by XLHED. And a good way to think about it is sort of a molecule is a person or a worker that goes around and switches on an assembly line. Each molecule is specific to a certain assembly line. In the case of EDI 200, that's a replacement for a protein called ectodysplasin, or EDA. And EDA is the protein that switches on the pathway for what we call appendages of the ectoderm, and that's things like hair, teeth, sweat glands, glands of the respiratory tract. We have a lot of information from animal studies that we've done that lead us to believe that EDI 200 can be effective. You have to give EDI 200 as early as possible during development, and based on our animal studies, we believe that that period in humans is the first 14 days of life. We've enrolled several babies into our study at this point, and all of those babies are in various stages of follow-up at this point, and they all continue to do well. We're looking for newborn baby boys that are affected by XLHED, and we need to find out about those pregnancies and about those births as early as possible so that we can initiate treatment with EDI 200 within the first 2 weeks of life. There are 3 key steps in determining whether or not a baby is potentially eligible for our clinical trial. The first is to determine if the pregnant mother is in fact a carrier, and we can do that via a simple blood test during pregnancy. If she is in fact a carrier, the next step is to determine if she's carrying a boy. And then the third step is to determine whether or not the baby boy is XLHED affected. And again, we can do that with a simple blood test after delivery, or if the family elects for an amniocentesis during pregnancy, we can also do the genetic test on a sample of amniotic fluid. You will have to be away from home in order to participate in our clinical study. EDI 200 is not available yet to the general public. You have to go to a clinical site in order to get EDI 200 and be away from home for a period of time, 2.5 to 3 weeks. Our babies get 5 doses of EDI 200 over a 2.5 week period, and then they would be expected to come back to the clinical site for follow-up visits at the age of 2, 4, and 6 months. We have 6 sites around the world. Once we determine where they'd like to go for their study participation, we would put them in touch with the investigator or the physicians that we work with at that site and start working out things like scheduling and just the logistics of getting them there. Edimer helps to coordinate all those and makes all the arrangements for the families. Parents can bring other children that they may have, older siblings. If there are several children that are involved, they can even bring a caregiver. Edimer will do everything we possibly can to make sure that your time away from home is as easy and comfortable as we possibly can. We realize and we recognize that it's an inconvenience. It's certainly difficult to be away from home for any period of time, but particularly when you've just had a baby. All of our sites have hotels and accommodations very close by. In fact, some of them have accommodations that are connected to the actual hospital, so you can be close to your baby during the time that he's participating. We have a few services that we've sort of put in place to help. The first is a service that we offer through a company called Informed DNA, which provides over-the-phone genetic counseling services. So if women or parents in general have questions about genetic testing or inheritance patterns or family history, they can call Informed DNA and speak with a genetic counselor over the phone. We also offer genetic testing to women free of charge, women between the ages of 18 and 40, through a program that we call the XLHED Global Gene Screen. Parents that are interested in potentially participating can find out more information in a variety of different ways. Obviously, the first way they can find out is just to contact Edimer. So they can call me or they can email me and just ask questions is the first thing. Our study is also listed on a website called clinicaltrials.gov, which is where any company that's doing investigational studies lists their trials. Another way that parents can find out more information about Edimer or XLHED or the clinical trial is to contact an independent genetic counselor by the name of Carrie Millard, and her contact information can be found on the XLHED network website. Asking a question does not commit you to participating in the study. You can always change your mind down the road, but it's important to find out about your pregnancy and your risk of having an XLHED affected boy as early as possible. We recognize that being away from home is an inconvenience and it's difficult. Our hope is that families will recognize that there's a trade-off, that it's a very short period of inconvenience for a much bigger payoff. And not just for their babies, the ones that are participating in the study, but also for the XLHED community in general, and for future generations of those affected by XLHED.